Good morning, Vandal fans, and welcome to Sunday's edition of Fourth and Downtown. I'm your host, Josh Grissom, and I'm joined alongside Vandal Nation manager Luis the Godfather Torres. How are you doing this morning, Luis?
Well, it's just a typical Sunday morning. Too bad that Seahawks season is over, and it's nice. At least we finally have some nice weather.
That's true, and I am experiencing Seahawk withdrawals at the moment. It's tough when your team is out of the playoffs. Just a tough day, but season, it'll be here shortly. So on this program today, we have men's and women's basketball results, as well as the swim and dive meet that Idaho hosted yesterday, and then the track and field invite at Washington State, and then we'll discuss a little NFL action with the Idaho alums that are in the playoffs right now. But first, Luis, let's talk about the games at Montana State yesterday. Idaho looked to try and take a road trip in the state of Montana for the first time since 1993. Came up just short yesterday, fell to the Bobcats 70-68, 2 points. Some interesting things to take away from that game. Sophomore guard Victor Sanders was not in the lineup. He's been absolutely electric for Idaho. He scored over 80 points in the past 3 games for the team. He was not in the lineup. We were wondering what was going on, and you saw what Coach Verlin said. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, basically, the guy who's averaged almost 27 points a game in the last 4 outings did not play because Verlin said after the game to Chris King, I believe that's who does the radio broadcast for Idaho for men's. Pretty much what happened is apparently the quote-unquote icy tundra in Bozeman where he accidentally slipped and might have hurt his wrist. I talk about very bizarre and awful timing when you have your 2 leading scorers out and who knows how long with Cal Perry on calendar, and now we got to think about whether or not Victor Sanders will be healthy to play not just for this week but for the rest of the year, because when it's a wrist injury it does affect your game, especially when you do layups or free throws or all-around shooting. This is definitely not what Idaho needs right now for men's after what looked like they're going to be fine without Perry on for at least a couple of weeks. Now the guarding game has to really step up, and I think you're gonna see a lot more of urgency from, like we talked about, Chris Sarbaugh and the Sherwood brothers, and also probably put in some other guys who hasn't gotten a lot of minutes, like Nick Blair or Ty Egbert, which Egbert is the forward, but still, when you think about it, the guys who haven't gotten much playing time are going to get more like your Jordan Scotts and, again, Nick Blair. And even Pat Ingram, too.
Sorry, for the moment we are appearing to experience technical difficulties. We will work on resolving that problem, but in the meantime, we will continue to talk about Vandal Athletics. I'm not sure if I buy that whole story with Victor Sanders. No offense. Oftentimes there will be an excuse for something that happened that the coach or the team doesn't want you to know. They'll come up with something that sounds a little bit odd.
It sounds weird, but I guess we're going to have to wait till Tuesday's press conference to see what Verlin said. But I know, when I heard it was like slipped in the frozen and icy tundra in Montana where they're like walking or something, I am not entirely sure. I wasn't there, of course. It's in Montana, but it's just weird.
It could have been entirely what happened, but it's just really odd. And you don't normally hear those headlines. So I'm wondering if there was something else involved. They were horsing around or something outside where they weren't supposed to be, and maybe they slipped and fell, or I don't know. But the fact is, they lost. They don't have their 2 leading scorers in Perrion Calandret and Victor Sanders, and this is a very perimeter-focused team. They score almost all their points from their guards, and they haven't had as much post-play contribution as of late. So this really, really hurts the Vandals.
Yeah, and also considering like early in the year they were really good at sealing close games. Now this whole week they were not able to close these very tight games that could have been winnable, easily winnable. But Well, obviously, look what happened when we beat Montana. We nearly could have lost the game after having that strong run in the second half, but then we were able to seal the deal. Yesterday, and even a few instances lately, we haven't been able to. But this has just been a tough month of January when you think about it for men's basketball.
Very true, and this is a very pivotal stretch of their schedule. It looked after they took that Montana victory, it looked like they could very easily take the next few games in Big Sky play and really come out as one of the conference leaders. Just right now, they're 4-3 in Big Sky play. That if they had won yesterday, they would have been 5-2, and they have two very easy wins coming up next week. And I say easy, that was assuming that Victor Sanders would play and that hopefully Cal Andrett would be back. But if they're not, all of a sudden those two seemingly easy games turn into kind of a nightmare for Idaho as they're trying to adjust. Thankfully, they're not playing Weber State right now, but
Yeah, Weber State they've been on a hot winning streak. They have the hottest streak right now in Big Sky. The last time I checked, they were 8 in a row. So that's right now. Weber State are pretty much the team to beat in the conference, and whoever pulls off the win, it will be a big deal for whoever is close to Weber State, and also Montana and Eastern Washington. But now they gotta do more readjustments, and we're just gonna have to wait till what Verlin says in the press conference and figure out how legitimate it is. Obviously, to me it sounds weird, but then again, it is Montana and it's pretty cold down there.
True. I really like the play of freshman Nick Blair yesterday. Coming off the bench, he scored 14 points in the first half. Really took the game over. One of the reasons he said he came to Idaho was for playing time, and he got that yesterday, and he made the most of it, 14 first half points. But for some reason, that didn't carry over to the second half. Basketball is a very streaky sport, and you rarely see someone have a good game throughout the entirety of the game, just score consistently, quarter by quarter. First quarter 10 points, second quarter 10 points. No, you normally see something like first quarter 6, second quarter 2, third quarter 12, and then you have a good game like that. And that was kind of the situation for Nick Blair. 14 first half points, only 2 in the second half. He kind of sparked the Idaho offense early on, but in the second half, they did start the second half off very well. They grabbed a pretty significant lead, but just could not hang on there at the end. Montana State with a great comeback. It was great to see I know I talked a little bit about incorporating post play. It's something that Idaho needs to do. Ty Egbert had a great game. He scored 18 points, a career high. So, he really stepped up when they needed him to, but I feel like they definitely need to get more involved in the offense. Arkady McCutcheon just has not been who the Vandals thought he was going to be this year.
Yeah, that's another one. Now there's 3 key Vandal players that are hurt. It's just those players like Egbert and Blair really are doing wonders for Idaho right now. It's now, can they finish these games? And I mentioned it on Friday that's one of the key components. I even said when I predicted it was going to be very close, because I said they got to close these games. This time around they were unable to compared to what they did in Montana. And with Blair, it's when he gets going right away. Like the game against North Dakota, if I recall, he came off from the bench and just got right on it and scored some baskets and was really effective. That near the end helped Idaho to win that matchup in the final game of 2015. Now, like I said, it's just going to be very interesting these next couple of days to see whether or not Sanders will continue playing or he'll miss probably 1 or 2 games. We'll see. But it is one of those weird situations, for a Tundra slip. It's just weird. I kind of do agree with you that I'm kind of not buying it, but I can't really speculate much. I'm just gonna have to wait and kind of give my overall perspective after Tuesday's press conference.
So an interesting fact about the game: Montana State shot 27.6% from the floor in the first half. The Vandals shot 54.5% from the first half. Vandals took a 33-23 halftime lead. And at the end of the game, it wasn't too much different. Idaho finished the game shooting 54.3% from the field compared to 41.3% by the Bobcats. They definitely turned up a little bit. So if you looked at those numbers initially, you thought Idaho easily came away with the win. But here's where the difference in the game was. Montana State, 63 shot attempts. Idaho, 46. You can't win if you don't shoot the ball.
Yeah, or even get the opportunity to make the basket, because if you have the ball and you have an open lane or try to be aggressive and find an open gap to make the basket, you get more opportunities to score. If you don't get the ball too much, like in most sports, you kind of have a hard time finding a way to win. And then when you get that rare opportunity, you're going to be probably pressured to make the basket or make some big plays, which may be easy or may be difficult depending on the defender, how aggressive the defender is. And then if you're willing to make the basket, or you're going to have to pass it to somebody else. It's just one of those situations that the more basket attempts you make, or even successfully make for that matter, you're gonna win ball games. But also, not just that, you're gonna have to play defensively well or even guard, which Idaho are kind of struggling with that right now.
You know, another interesting stat for the Vandals: 7 of 15 from behind the arc. That's almost 50%. I am kind of shocked that they didn't shoot from outside more.
And with that, like, it is weird. Like you like, both programs in our school, but basketball in general, like the 3-point shots beyond the arc, it's like we usually do really well upon it, and sometimes convincingly. And the fact with not many threes happen or attempted, you wonder if they had made more attempts, they probably would have won. But like Verlin said in the past, like they're gonna pretty much got to move forward.
So a couple quotes for you folks. This is head coach Brian Fish of Montana State talking in a post-game interview last night. He said, quote, "When you play Verlin's team, you know you are going into a tough game. They were down a couple of good players, and they brought it and exposed us in the first half with toughness," end quote. And he also went on record about Victor Sanders and his impact on the Vandals offense. He said, quote, "Well, Victor was hurt, and anytime you have a good team, they have a chance for guys to step up, and Nick Blair stepped up and made some three-pointers for them," end quote. And that was head coach Brian Fish of Montana State, recognizing that maybe Nick Blair is something the Vandals can really look forward to as far as grooming talent and potential underclassmen. He's just a freshman, so great that he's able to step up and kind of take over a little bit when Calendret and Sanders are missing. But if you were to think, if this is something long-term for Calendret that's going to linger and affect his play, what do you do? You wrote a column piece, Luis, about kind of shuffling the guards around and their options outside of Sanders. What do you think?
I say, like, when it comes to Calendar, if it's going to be lingering long-term, I say when he comes back, give him some time to fully recuperate. If it requires not many minutes, but plenty that he can still be effective and a huge contributor to the team, I say we'll go with it and groom some of the guys like Nick Blair, or even both Sherwoods, Chad and Nate, because they're going to be around. Obviously, Sarba, he's a senior. This is his only year he gets to play for Idaho. So they got to probably groom some of them up. But it means that Calendar is going to have to play less minutes for now until he's 100% healthy. Because when we bring up Arkady McCurchin, different injury to some extent, when he still plays several minutes, but he still has the lingering effects. So I say, knowing that, you're probably going to have to put Perry on limited minutes, and once he's ready to go near the end, once he's 100% healthy, I say go for him to start. But for now, you got to have to groom the Sherwoods and Blair when you get the opportunity.
True. The loss drops Idaho to 12-8 overall, 4-3 in Big Sky Conference play. Montana State improves to 9-11, 4-4 in Big Sky Conference play. Next week, the Vandals will be back in Moscow. They will take on Sacramento State Thursday, and then Portland State Saturday. Both those games, I believe, are at 7 p.m. So hopefully they're able to find whatever they need and remain kind of atop just the first 3 or 4 teams of the Big Sky Conference heading into the tournament in March. But now we turn our attention to women's basketball. The team was here at the Cowan Spectrum yesterday. They were also facing Montana State. Another very close matchup between the two programs, but Idaho fell 62-59. Montana State earned its 6th consecutive victory over the Vandals, and it came down to a final shot. Taylor Pierce tried a deep 3 as the buzzer sounded, but it just clanked off the back of the rim. Vandals were unable to kind of close it there in crunch time, but they did lead very early on, and they actually had a 9-point lead, I think, heading into the third quarter, and the Bobcats just went on a 16-4 run to take the lead back and to just really put the Vandals on their heels. Luis, what do you think this win is going to show about the women's program?
Well, for one thing, even as great as Taylor Pierce is, she pretty much witnessed her first major heartbreak. Like, it is hard when you try to go for the game-winning 3, and it just does not go in. I think, if based on what I've read and heard, it's like they're pretty much are aware of it. They pretty much gotta still make some improvements. And I said there's room for improvement, and I talked about it on Friday too, that they're doing really well. They just gotta polish a couple of things, and then they'll be really strong. But I think it shows that no matter how close it is, you just gonna have to find a way to stop your opponent from getting those large runs, because that was significant. And they talked about the third quarter, and even turnovers was a huge detriment for Idaho. If they, like I said, those things would have been taken care of, we'd probably be talking a different ball game, and then probably Pierce would have not been in that situation. But hey, when you have not much time left and you're given the ball and make a big time shot that could win or lose the game, it kind of shows that they trust you. And I think it's come to the point that they kind of trust Taylor to make those opportunities, even though it didn't work out to her liking or the team's liking. I think it shows that down the road you're going to have those moments, especially in the collegiate level. And I think she just witnessed that huge challenge, or kind of not really a burden, but that situation. I don't know how to describe it in a unique way. In a huge situation where you're gonna have the good days, you're gonna have bad days, you're gonna have heartbreaking days, and she pretty much had all 3 of them to some extent. Like the good days that she still scored several points, I believe 25. The bad that the team lost and they had those turnovers, and then the heartbreak that the 3 didn't win in.
True. It was really good to see the team kind of rely on her for the final shot. Obviously, I was there for the final couple minutes of the game just to check it out, and it wasn't drawn up that way. It wasn't supposed to be Pierce taking the shot. They had this play designed in the final seconds, and there was just a couple screens, and those screens weren't open, and she pulled up for the shot. But you could tell that the team was okay with that as the ball went up. It wasn't like people were upset with her for the shot. It was a good look. It was deep, but it was a good look for the amount of time that they had left, and it just didn't go in. Looking at this game, I think there were a couple of veteran players who led the team. Geraldine McCorkle with 15 points, Christina Salvatore with 11. But besides that, I mean, Connie Ballestero had 8. Besides that, there wasn't really much contribution from anyone else, and I think that might be something to look at for the Vandals, and maybe getting some of the rest of the offense incorporated. I know some veteran players are generally going to be consistent no matter what game they're in. They'll put up points on the board. This was just a game where no one else kind of stepped up for the Vandals, I feel like, down the stretch. And, Pierce with 5 points, Ferenz with 5. Ali Ford with 4. Not usually the numbers you see from some of those players.
And I meant to say 5, my bad. But it's only 2. Like the last couple of weeks, there's at least 3 or 4 that I got 10 or more points. This one's just the fact that only one got a little over 10 points and one slightly over 10 points. I think it's one of those situations where team chemistry could be a huge question, which they kind of shown, but it's just a matter of the home. Obviously, it's a home game. You don't want to kind of like quote unquote embarrass yourself, or let alone kind of like let one bad play or tough loss define the team from the home crowd. Because like they have several coaches that emphasize you got to win on the road. I think winning your home court, your own area, is crucial, and especially with how well Idaho has been doing. They gotta do it. They gotta really defend their home court.
See, I'm gonna disagree with you on the chemistry aspect. I think the team, as it appears to me, they seem like they're very good together.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of strife or internal battles over ball control or roles on the team. I think they really have that down.
Yeah, fair. Just kind of like
I think
slightly, not much of a significance, but we'll see.
Every team has a bad game.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Golden State. They have Stephon Curry. They have Klay Thompson. They have Draymond Green. They still can lose a game every once in a while. It just might have been a bad day for Idaho. It's just you generally don't see those games at home. But it was a close matchup.
Yeah, still.
They're 5-2 in Big Sky play. They're very much in the hunt for the top seed. It's not like...
Yeah. No, don't get me wrong. I know it's just one game. It's just kind of how I'm viewing it, as one game, and I could be completely wrong. But it's like they were pretty much generous. They were generous in the fact they relied. Like I said, even though it wasn't planned, it still kind of shows they have some. Reliability is still good. It's just kind of like, hopefully it's not going to be the case where this game could be the make or break moment of the breaking point of the season. But I doubt it. But yes, you probably have bad days. It's just not. It was one of those situations like the third quarter just did not went well, and they just kind of had to recover. And I think they did recovery point they just did fine. But it's kind of like they're probably going to be more aware, and I think they're going to emphasize it during practice before their next matchup, that they got to control the ball or not let the opponent take it away from you. Otherwise, it's just going to be a problem long term.
True. I would like to reiterate, like kind of talking about the pivotal point of the season for the Vandals on the men's side. We'll get to that in a little bit. We'll finish up here with the women's, kind of talking about what they said in the post-game press conference. Geraldine McCorkle said, quote, "I think we were all disappointed about this one. We were right there. That third quarter was our Achilles heel. We will definitely use this going into the next couple games. We want to win." End quote. I think they have a good mentality. I think they're in a good spot. 13-6 overall, 5-2 in Big Sky Conference play, and they were playing a very good Montana State team. Let's not forget about that. Montana State is 14-5 overall, 7-1 in the Big Sky Conference. They're right up there. So this wasn't like any other opponent for the Vandals. This was a very good team.
Yeah, and sometimes when you look at the numbers, it kind of shows that they were facing a really competitive team, and that Montana State were really competitive. And it's like with turnovers is really hard, especially when you're facing probably a potential competitor down the stretch where in the tournament. You're probably going to face them again, and to reiterate what happened on what I said on Friday once again, you may win the first one or win and lose the second one, or sweep or win both of them or lose both of the regular season ones, but that third game, that's the one that really matters. It doesn't matter how well you were in the regular season, you just got to do it in the big game situation. You got to go for it regardless, and most of the time it's a contrasting result.
And head coach John Newley after the game, he said, quote, "We had our opportunities down the stretch. We gave it away at the start of the game and in that third quarter. We did not come out defensively with the intensity level that I expected. The then 11 in the turnovers in the third quarter were killer. I believe that he meant to say the end quote. And just I think they're in a good spot. It was just a tough matchup against a quality opponent, and I believe next week they'll come out and really take it up another level. They face Sacramento State on the road Thursday, and then Portland State on the road Saturday. Let's get back to men's basketball again real quick. You were talking about pivotal point in the season for the women's basketball team. I'm almost inclined to argue that yesterday was the pivotal moment for the men's basketball program. It was a chance for them to really go just kind of transition their season from, fairly good to really good as far as conference play. Instead of being 5-2, looking at kind of 2 more easy wins for the chance to be 7-2, they're 4-3, hoping to be 6-3 at the end of next week. It just sounds better to say 7-2 than 6-3, but I think if they had won that game, they wouldn't feel as much pressure, especially with the injuries that they have to Calendret and Sanders, and they wouldn't be forced to try and create these opportunities or to struggle trying to find combinations of players on the court that will score and have offensive output.
Yeah, it's like, had they won that game, I think we'd probably be more calm with the whole situation right now. But now when you have your top 2 scorers out, it's just, and the way it happened, to be quite honest, it's just not, like I said, not what they need. And yesterday was a prime example that they still need a lot of work to do and kind of groom a couple more guys, because we've emphasized it all year. It was the quote-unquote Perrion and Sanders show. Now with those 2 out for an unknown amount of time, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be a rough couple of weeks if they don't really put the pieces together like they did without Perrion. They seemed like they were doing fine with the shuffling the guards, but now they were not expecting Sanders to have what it looks like a unfortunate circumstance that happened to him, with a freak accident to some degree. They're just gonna have to shuffle again, or bring a couple of their young guys who hasn't got a lot of minutes to play. But it's just a matter of how much of an impact can they make. And right now, they don't really have that per se, and it's gonna take a while for them to work. That's what's their, I would say their. You're right, the pivotal point of the season. I was gonna probably say breaking point, but we don't know what happened, or we don't know yet. It's just the startup. It's just that for now it's pivotal, and it's not, and it couldn't happen at a worse time, especially near the end of January, going into February.
It'll be very interesting to see what Idaho head coach Don Verlin does with the lineups moving forward in Thursday's matchup against Sacramento State. 7 p.m. at the Cowan Spectrum. Vandal fans, if you are interested, definitely check that one out. We'll move on to swim and dive. The team hosted its senior meet, basically the last home meet of the year for the team. Happens in January. They're going to be on the road for the rest of the season. And Luis, you were there at the facilities. Tell us what you saw.
It was obviously they recognized the 3 seniors, including Emily Rosinski and Sammy Hendricks, that which I did talk to both of them after the meet, and it's like they had to hold on to their boats because they know the meet was going to happen right away, and it was a really competitive swim meets. It went from with the relays and the meters. It was pretty much, for the most part, they were really close. But we won 12 out of the 16. 10 out of the 14 were the swimming portions. 2 of the divings we both won, mainly because there was only just us Idaho Vandals that were in that event, the first and the both meters, the 3 and the 1 meter diving. But it was pretty much Idaho cruise control. And Mark Zoe said it is like when you beat a Pac-12 opponent like Oregon State, it's really fun when they win those kind of games. And they too had to turn things around, because they had a rough going at La Cruces, New Mexico, where just a couple things did not win well. And he even asked them after the La Cruces meet, like what is your takeaway, what you're going to learn from it, and I think they really capitalized it and did really well. And as far as the seniors, Soa said that their legacy is their leadership, which I could probably go a little bit more into detail because we are at 11:30 right now.
Yes. We will pause for some station identification. Stay tuned for more 4th and Downtown on KUI 89.3 FM Moscow.
Chris, can you put the video game controller down for a second?
I can talk and play. Oh, I'm totally annihilating this.
I know her name was Nikki, the one that won both divings. I just can't remember her last name on the top of my head.
Well, you still ride your skateboard to work. There's the comic book collection, the race car bed.
Look, I'm young at heart, but I put money into my
Yeah,
401k.
probably the results I can
I picked up
remember.
a few savings tips at feedthepig.org. I have control over my
'Cause I know who. Oh, there it is. Nikki. Let's see.
Imanaka?
Imanaka, yeah.
Okay.
I just do not want to say like the first name and then not knowing, then for the listeners not knowing which Nikki I'm talking about because there's like 3 Emilys.
Easy tips on ways to save.
in the-
Go to feedthepig.org. That's .org.
So, I bet I look like a grown-up to you now.
Well, except for the footy pajamas, I'd have to agree.
This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
And we're back, Vandal fans, for 4th and Downtown this Sunday morning in Moscow. It's a sunny day out. Very good to see that. And we were just talking about the swim and dive results from the team's senior meet at home. They didn't just beat Oregon State. They annihilated the Pac-12 opponent. They came away with a 188-106 victory over the Beavers at the UI Swim Center. The Vandals took 12 of 16 events on the day, and they honored the seniors that included Sammy Hendricks, Emily Rizzini, and Allison Hodgen, who were spending their last time at home at the UI swim facilities. Head coach Sawa said, "Their legacy is leadership. Their maturity as leaders this year has been extraordinary. Because we have such a young team, to have those 3 really take on that leadership mantle has been so impressive. You know they want to leave their marks on this place." End quote. Luis, you were there in person. Tell us a little bit more about kind of the atmosphere and stuff surrounding Swim and Dive, because I haven't actually been to one of those events yet, and it looks really fun, especially from the tweets and the social media stuff that you posted.
They're really a very cohesive team. Like from start to finish, they're really energized. They're there for one another. They root for each other. Even the longer events that like the 1,000 meter, because the back and forth is one side is 25 and the other, and both sides is 50. When you have like a 40 lap event for 1,000 meter, which is like 25 one side, 25 in the other, they're really there. They really root each other, support for one another, even when they're not. Even for the swimmers, they're not competing in that particular event, and it kind of shows that that teamwork is really important to them. Trust in one another. Even if there's 3 seniors and the majority are underclassmen or freshmen for that matter, they really have a good attitude about it. And I talked to Sarah Hall, who won one of the events at the 200 meter freestyle. If I'm correct me if I'm wrong, and trying to kind of.
I believe so.
Yeah, try to keep it going. Something when I say stuff like I want to keep it going without having dead air or pauses. So she pretty much said like after La Cruz's, the attitude was a little bit down, the mood, but they made a statement yesterday that they really have a good attitude. They pretty much brought their confidence back. And Hall said going into the next couple of weeks, she wants to get better, like improve her time, because she said she had one of her better times in that event. That getting top 5s, because they're already thinking postseason. They're really thinking postseason and getting ready for the WAC championship and Houston, Texas, in a couple of weeks. But they really are the home stretch, and Soa even said that he wants to end it on a really good note. But it is to describe it, is very cohesive. You kind of have to see it to kind of believe it. It's one of those things that they're really there for one another, that they support each other, even kind of like give it their all. They kind of like how much practice and training they do, even during the meets or before the events. They even do a little bit more training after the meets. So I hang around, try to get interviews and all that, and they were still doing some trainings and practices. So you think like once the meet is done, they still work at it and get better and better and kind of still get healthy and in shape, because swimming is a whole different animal.
For those of you who didn't see, Luis covered the events yesterday on social media for Vandal Nation, on Twitter at Vandal Nation, and on Instagram, The Vandal Nation. Some really unique perspectives on the matchup, a little bit more than just 140 characters in a tweet. Definitely go check that out if you're interested. Some quick facts from the swim and dive matchup. Kara Jernigan won the 100 breaststroke in a time of 1:04:07, and the 200 breaststroke in a time of 2:20:34. Emily Kuehler, her victories were in the 100 butterfly with a time of 57.64, and the 100 freestyle with a time of 52.75. And Nikki Imanaka tallied 293.78 points in the 1 meter dive and 262.20 points in the 3 meter event to win those competitions. Some great play from the team during their last home meet of the year. Fantastic to see that.
Yeah, and Hendricks, out of the seniors, Hendricks was the one who got wins in both of the relays. So gotta bring that up as far as, so the seniors were. Although it's kind of once again I go back, it's pretty much become a youth movement, and it's pretty much the year of the youth movement and all around sports for the most part. And it's kind of weird, but also sort of no surprise that right now it's kind of like we gotta expect it these days now. If we were talking about 15, 20 years ago, it would not been the case whatsoever, unless if it's like a large team, which swimming and diving is too. But no, it was a really competitive one, and Idaho beating a Pac-12 opponent is like a significant deal after what happened when they faced their opponents of New Mexico State.
Yes, they didn't quite do so well, and the coach said that they would need to step it up, and that inexperience was a factor, but it was definitely not a factor yesterday. Idaho, again, with the 188-106 victory over Oregon State in swim and dive competition. Moving on now, the Idaho track and field team competed at the Washington State University indoor event yesterday in Pullman. They had a couple of Vandals with individual bests. Colsey Bates continued her impressive string of meets. She finished 9th in the shot put at 2.35 meters. I believe that's a personal best for her. She also won the discus on Friday and placed 4th in the weight throw. Fantastic play by her. Andrea Pikes earned a spot in the finals of the 60-meter dash. She finished with a final time of 8 seconds flat. She would finish 8th in the finals at a time of 8:06. Emma Balazaz took 8th in the 400-meter dash with a time of 1:01.14. Luis, you didn't cover this event. We had a different reporter on it, but you've kind of seen the team and stuff before. How do you feel that they look going forward into the spring season?
Well, I covered the one here at the Kiwi Dome last week. I mentioned, I might have mentioned it to you personally, but I don't think I mentioned it here on air, that Tim Colley says that the amount of training, practice, and effort they've done in the fall to get ready for the spring season to get going is really showing dividends right now in a positive light. Like they've already had 4 guys already qualified for the Big Sky Indoor Championships already. So it kind of shows you this is a different Idaho team. They're really there. We've got it really competitive. He said they're trying to get him more competitive as the season goes on, but once they're comfortable or down the stretch, they're gonna probably ease them off a little bit to get them more ready for the championships. And that's kind of like their goal. They're trying to get as many of them as possible. And they did really well last week at the Kiwi Dome. I know this is like sort of old news, but kind of a reminder how this team really was. They won several of the meets. They competed with like Washington State, Central, Spokane, and Gonzaga, to name a few. So they had to compete with a really strong schools, and obviously with the WSU indoor, they faced Washington State once again. But they were really adamant of being competitive and get them to get better, even if they had that one good jump. So will be there right away, keeping an eye on. He keeps an eye on every event, no matter whether it's shot put, triple jump, long jump, short jump, pole vault. He's there to give advice, trying to get him a little better, or find him a little bit of energy to find that higher jump that will get him the top spot. And that's kind of the coach he is, Collie is, that trying to get him to find that bigger gap that will be more significant. It's like good is good, but you can do better.
True, and I believe this is his quote. This is the media relations press release by Idaho. It's unattributed, but I read through it, and it sounds like this is their head coach. It says, "I think the team competed hard. We trained through this meet a little bit in preparation for the big invitational at the University of Washington next week. But I'm still excited for where the team is at, and I think we're in a good position to keep getting stronger." The meet he's referring to is next weekend, is the UW Invite in Seattle from January 29th to 30th. If there's any Vandals in the greater Seattle area, go on and cheer on your Idaho athletes. But yeah, he said like kind of it sounds like they were experimenting a little bit with some players and kind of some events and everything, and they were just training a little bit more for the meet next week. But they still had a fairly good day, I think, overall, or a couple of days from their track and field athletes.
Yeah, and just like if they're thinking big picture, and that's kind of how I view this track and field team from an indoor perspective. They're thinking big picture. Yes, they'll treat every meet seriously, trying to go for wins, trying to get more people to qualify for the championships. But at the same time, they're thinking big picture. They kind of have a strategy a little bit, or being a little bit conservative, but not too conservative where the results will suffer, but conservative enough where they'll be competitive and go out for wins or personal best, or even try to go for school records.
And we're going to shift our attention, but let me just first say that you can find coverage of all of these events, the men's and women's basketball, the swim and dive, the track and field, in Tuesday's edition of The Argonaut, and it will be online Monday night on Vandal Nation during our production night. So definitely, if you want a little bit more coverage of those, look into them. Read the website, www.thevandalnation.com, or pick up a copy of The Argonaut around campus. If you pick up a copy of, today, it'll kind of talk about the men's and women's basketball and their wins over Montana. Idaho upset a conference leader. But it also has some great stories in there. Tess Fox wrote a feature on Taylor Pierce, the freshman for Idaho, who's kind of emerged as a kind of a bench player to kind of a star of their team right now. Fantastic journey of hers. Be sure to check that out. Also, Luis, the Godfather Torres, wrote a basketball piece on the men's team and kind of what the team needs to do in the absence of Callan Jett, and now that is just ever more so important if Sanders is out anytime in the near future. So feel free to pick up an Argonaut and read those, or see the stories on vandalnation.com. Right now, I guess we will turn our attention kind of to a lingering issue for the Idaho Vandals. It impacts their football team. Basically, the NCAA deregulation vote earlier this month has created this situation where conferences do not need to have 12 members in order to host a conference championship game. Sounds kind of boring, but actually has huge impact for the Vandals. The team is part of the Sun Belt Conference, and the Sun Belt Conference currently has 11 members. The conference added Idaho and New Mexico State a few years ago as a way to kind of meet the required 12-team rule for hosting a conference championship. They're at 11, and they were adding another team beginning in the 2017 season, Coastal Carolina, so that way they could meet the 12-team requirement. But now they don't need to have 12 teams to host a conference championship. And a lot of folks are saying that spells doom for the Idaho program in the Sun Belt, because Idaho's a little bit out of the way for teams to travel and to play on a consistent basis. Especially, it's just not geographically friendly to be a part of the Sun Belt Conference. And now the Sun Belt Conference officials are kind of faced with a decision when they meet March 10th about whether or not they will offer a contract extension to Idaho and New Mexico State. Both of those our contracts are expected to end at the conclusion of the 2017 season. Luis, I know we've kind of talked a little bit about this outside of the office and outside of the booth. What do you make of the vote and the impact it has on the conference?
Well, you mentioned that it's not geographically friendly. That could play a huge factor of the decision. But right now, the way it is, we're an FBS team, but there's also the stuff going on. There's speculation that if this agreement doesn't happen, we may go to an FCS program, which some people see positive lights, because that means we could probably reestablish some rivalries like Montana, which they haven't played in 13 years. But that means they'll be the first to drop from an FBS to an FCS since they started this whole FCS groups. But this is just big unknowns, and I can probably discuss more about it when we come back from the Holy promo that was about to happen.
Yes, we will pause for just a brief minute for the promo, and we'll be right back. Don't turn your dial. This is 4th and Downtown. And we're back, Vandal fans. This is 4th and Downtown. I'm Josh Grissom, joined alongside by Luis the Godfather Torres. We were talking a little bit about Vandal football and kind of the situation that the program finds itself at right now after the NCAA deregulation vote. Conferences are no longer required to have 12 teams in order to host a conference championship. And right now, the Vandals are football-only members of the Sun Belt Conference, and the conference has 11 teams right now. They're adding a 12th, but with this new ruling, the Sun Belt can very easily just cancel out of its contract, or when the contract ends, Idaho will be without a conference to call home, essentially, if they decide to do that. March 10th will be the day of the vote, and it'll be very interesting to see exactly what happens, what they decide to do. I know initially it sounds like very, very bad news for Vandal football, but there is one positive out of that news. It's that if a conference is going to host a championship game with less than 12 members, they must play round robin style, which means every team has to face off against one another at some point during the year. And the downside of that is that it messes with the future schedules that have already kind of been created for the conference. And it impacts basically revenue games, because instead of playing 8 conference games or whatever they're playing nowadays, they will have to play 9. And it just makes it that much more difficult to get money, because a lot of the times they'll schedule an out-of-conference game with someone from like the SEC or the Pac-12 as a way to get money for the program, and they wouldn't be able to do that as much if this was something that came to fruition. But let's just let's just hypothesize right now about what happens. Let's say Idaho is not allowed back into the Sun Belt Conference. They decide to, cut the team from the conference in 2000 for the 2018 season. The Vandals are basically faced with two options. One is independence. They don't have a conference. They tried that once, and it was kind of difficult. There's only a couple of independent teams in all of college football, I believe.
Notre Dame, BYU. Are they still independent? I think
Maybe?
I know they were at one point. Notre Dame definitely are one.
Army. I want to say it's
Yeah.
Army, Notre Dame, and BYU right now.
Yeah,
But it sounds like BYU is going to be added to a conference anyway.
yeah. I think I could have sworn that might happen or already have happened, but that's what they talked about for a while.
So
But for sure, it's Notre Dame. I know that.
yeah, so it's tough. A lot of teams won't do it, and you don't get conference revenue, and you have difficulty kind of scheduling opponents or getting opponents to play at your place, which, the Vandals will play basically they'll play like anywhere that they're offered. I believe they were playing at Florida, they played at Auburn, they played at USC.
Florida State when Jameis Winston was around a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Which we're definitely not bringing up the score of that one.
So
And the Florida one never really we only got one play out of it, and I don't know if
it was not a very good play, let me tell you that.
and it kind of was sort of expected by many people's eyes, but thankfully Mother Nature was sort of on our side, and then didn't got worse. But correct me if I'm wrong. Is that game still happening or no? I know they were moved to 2017 as the latest.
I believe it's still scheduled
Yeah.
as of now, but we will see. Basically, the other option for Idaho would be to drop down to the FCS and to be a part of the Big Sky Conference, which has always had an open invitation for Idaho. The positives of that is that now all of our sports would be Big Sky Conference. Football's kind of an outlier in the Sun Belt.
With the exception of, like I mentioned earlier, swimming, diving, and the WAC.
Yes, which still exists for swim and dive, but not for football, which we used to be a part of. But just, it's more geographically friendly. You play teams like Montana, Portland State. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting all these teams off the top of my head, but Montana State. It's just a lot friendlier as far as travel schedules.
You even have Eastern Washington.
Eastern
too,
Washington, yes. And
which for the last couple of years they've been like the cream of the crop of FCS football for quite some time. They even pull a couple of major upsets or near upsets. If I remember, Oregon State, they beat Oregon State, right? The Eastern Washington?
maybe
Might have been Oregon State. I know they were close to beating Washington.
Portland State beat Washington State. So a lot of people say, oh, we drop down, we'll be more competitive. That might not be the case.
Because, look, like I mentioned, Eastern Washington and even Portland State, which we emphasize a lot in the fall because we also at times bring up WSU football since they're like 10 minutes away from us. And it's like, even though we move down, if we have to move down, we're still going to have to face probably the top FCS teams in the country, which will be hard.
Yes. It's no picnic. And we'll also lose scholarships. I think we go from 85 scholarships to 63. It's just a very tough environment financially and as far as recruiting. I don't know. It stuck between a rock and a hard place is what I like to think of it as. You don't know what they'll do or what'll happen. You just have to wait and see, and that's kind of Vandal fans are kind of just hoping, keeping their fingers crossed, holding their breath that the Sun Belt officials just say, okay, well, you know what, we'll keep you. Because you don't want to be that program that dropped from FBS to FCS, the first program in modern history to do that.
No, it's sort of similar that you do not want to be Obviously this is a different situation. Obviously you don't want to be the first in a bad light, kind of like what SMU was back in the 80s with the death panel. You do not want to be the first FBS team to drop to the FCS. That's gonna be the hardest thing to kind of realize or understand that could happen. But also it could lead to renewing a rivalry that was Montana. But at the same time, we went down because of the whole deregulation not being on our side. Because where will we go? But if we were to stick in the FBS, if we don't get the Big Sky here, Sun Belt, where do we go from there? Independent, like I said, they already tried it, but it's hard to get those teams that when you think independent, you think it's like, oh, nice, we're probably going to face Notre Dame. No, it's not the case.
No. I guess
there's some that will think that way, but that's definitely not the case. And then when we tried it in 2013, that was the definite example. It's like, even though we're independent, we're not going to face like Notre Dame or BYU or Army Auburn, not just because they're independent too. It's just how the school, the program views opponents.
Yes. And here's the one positive thing I will say about the Big Sky Conference. It's geographically friendly. I would be excited to go on road trips to cover the team. I would genuinely enjoy that. I know, looking at the schedule for next year, Idaho faces Washington State and UW, and I was thrilled to see that because I'm like, okay, wow, we can maybe cover these games on the road. This is something that's close because I'm not going to go down to Alabama to watch the Vandals play.
Or especially red-eye flights and what happened in Southern Alabama. Even though we won the darn thing, but it's like it's far and it's weird that us and New Mexico State, I think, that we're the furthest, and you have like the other Sun Belts all in the south region of the United States. It's just not geographically friendly. And also it's like, when you think about college football, when we face those teams, like, which one of those Sun Belt teams will be like major bowl game worthy? Which in this case we're not. We're like the biggest conference in the world. We can look at. I go back to another conference, the USA Conference, I believe, where Houston was. Even though they were undefeated or close to undefeated and all that, they were top 20 for most of the year. They still didn't get a major bowl game. They got a decent bowl game by what many people say, but still,
yeah,
it's like obviously when we get a bowl game opportunity, is a huge deal for our school, especially in our area. It's a huge deal, but that's also another thing too, that if we go down, that means we're going. If I firmly correct, we have a tournament bracket. If I remember,
yes, it's a playoff system. We were a part of it. I want to say late 80s, early 90s, I believe. And we did fairly well, or 70s. We did fairly well in the FCS when we were playing in the playoffs and stuff, but we never quite won the whole thing. But yeah, I would be excited for closer opponents. I can already tell you that the Argonaut and Vandal Nation will be looking into press passes for our reporters for those road trips, just to be able to try and maybe get a couple reporters there.
Yeah, and also in addition to that too, it's like when you have closer games, maybe we'll get more people to our games too. For especially the opponents, kind of like, say if we host for example, if we host Eastern Washington, I can promise you we're gonna have a full crowd. That's another thing too, because when we face when the opponents come here, there's not that many. There's a couple, but not that many because of the traveling. But with Big Sky, you're probably going to see a lot more.
True. All right, we only have a couple more minutes, so we're going to turn our attention real quickly to the NFL playoffs that are today, the AFC and NFC championships. We have two Vandal alumni who are in the playoffs right now. Mike Iupati, the left guard of the Arizona Cardinals, and Shiloh Keo, the strong safety, I believe, for the Denver Broncos. Both played at Idaho. Both were standouts, and they will be fighting today for the NFC Championship on Iupati's side and the AFC Championship on Keo's side. Keo will be facing up against Tom Brady today. Hopefully the Vandal will be able to snag a couple of those passes, but we will see. Luis, very quickly, what are your predictions as far as final scores for the game?
for New England versus Denver, I'm going to go 31-20. From a realistic standpoint, 31-18 New England. As much as I want Denver to win that one.
Okay, I'm going to say New England 24, Denver 13. I understand it's Denver's at home, but I just don't think the Denver offense has as much firepower as Brady does with his weapons, and they'll be hard-pressed to score, I think. So 24-13 is my guess for the AFC Championship. On the NFC side, Luis, what are your predictions?
Again, gotta like with the whole, as much as I want Arizona, it's probably gonna be Carol. As much as I don't want to see it, and probably not many people will. And from a realistic standpoint, putting my journalist broadcasting cap on, I think it's just gonna be Harris. It's gonna be too tough to handle. Cam Newton and all those guys. I believe the final score, I'm gonna say it will be Carolina 21, Arizona 10, and it's just a matter of can Carson Palmer finally get over the hurdle that had been put on for a real long time since he's been in the NFL. Can he play in big time situations? He's got the numbers in the past, but can he finally seal the deal and get Arizona back to the Super Bowl for the first time since Super Bowl 43 against Pittsburgh? That one has a slight chance of being closer, but Carson Palmer and the offense, even though they won against Green Bay in overtime, they keep that in mind. Green Bay caught back, and that's going to be a huge eye opener. Same with Carolina, how Seattle found a rally. So those teams have to figure it out that they cannot let this game slip away or get closer than it should be.
True. Normally I'd say it's a little bit higher scoring of a contest, but with the storm hitting the East Coast, Charlotte is getting a little bit of that brunt. I say Carolina 28, Arizona 20. I think, I'd say that's a good score. I think Carolina has some offensive weapons, and they will be able to easily take care of the Cardinals. And, so unfortunately that means with our predictions, neither Idaho alumni will be in the Super Bowl, but you never know. We play these games for a reason because it doesn't always go according to schedule. You can ask Tom Brady about that when he faced Eli Manning in the Super Bowl when the Patriots were undefeated. That did not go the way they expected. So, we are at the end of our show. We want to thank you for tuning in to 4th and Downtown on Sunday. We will be back Friday at 3:30 to 4. We encourage you to view our website, www.thevandalnation.com, for the latest news, features, and other breaking kind of social media posts and stuff about the student athletes and sports on campus. And we'd also like to encourage you to view our Twitter at Vandal Nation, as well as our Instagram, The Vandal Nation. And as always, our work will be in the Argonaut, coming out Tuesday morning and again Friday morning. Thanks for listening, everybody. I'm your host, Josh Grissom. I was joined alongside by Luis the Godfather Torres. Thank you for listening, and have a great week, Vandals.
Till we meet again, people.